Welcome to CMMS Radio, a podcast and general resource for all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices and have a successful CMMS journey. We'll bring in experts along the way to help us learn more about CMMS, facilities operations, and much more. If you need help with the CMMS project, send a message at CMMSradio.com using the What's on Your Mind link. Suggest a topic, share your CMMS story, or ask questions. Save 50% to attend the Reliable Plant and Machinery Lubrication Conference and Exhibit happening June 3rd through 6th, 2024 in Chicago. Use code GREG50OFF at conference.reliableplant.com or click the link below. Learning sessions, case studies, the latest technology. Reliable Plant covers every facet of asset management and reliability in one 4-day event. We'll see you in Chicago.
Everyone, thank you for tuning in. We are here at Brightly Illuminate in Raleigh, North Carolina. Brightly Illuminate is about bringing the best ideas to light. Today, we are joined by Patrick Ferretti, and he is in charge of the Origin project, and he's going to talk to us about that product. We're also joined by Corey Dickens. You've had several opportunities to meet him on our episodes. He's been on at least 3 times, if not more. But Patrick, what I'd like to do starting off is just talk a little bit about your background, how you got into the maintenance space overall, because I know you've got an extensive facilities background, and I'm also going to hit you up on your military background. But take it away, tell us a little bit about how you got into this space, when did it happen, and how does that journey story look and sound?
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, Greg. So my background actually started in construction. So I made my bones in construction, building management. I was a apprentice, journeyman, mechanic, and 2008 came. So I started my construction career in 2000. 2008 came and everything started to drop off. Your construction sites just started to dry up. And I'm a union guy. I'm on the bench every 3 months. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I got a family to feed type deal. Well, I got a call from a recruiter who didn't interview but pitched me a job. They said, great opportunity. Tell me about yourself. And next thing I know, he said, great. Yeah, this sounds good. Well, we'd like to get you a ticket to come out and work in Iraq. Excuse me? Hey, yeah, okay, let me think about this. And, come to find out, it turned out to be the best experience of my life. So that's where I was introduced to facilities management. So my background in construction allowed me to see, the inner workings of the walls, inner workings of all these structures. I knew how to replace, how to service, how to do all the work on it. But now I'm looking at it from the facilities end, where we're seeing, it doesn't matter what the day is supposed to look like. Now you've got all these different problems, all these different things starting to take place. I spent about 4 years overseas supporting our military. It was probably one of the best experiences I had. I worked with people from all over the world. I supervised and managed groups of third country nationals from all over the world, India, Pakistan, Philippines, and who knows where. I sat with people from Bosnia and Britain and everywhere else. It was just a good collaboration of people and just a good cultural experience. So seeing that, I accomplished my goals. 4 years later, I come home. I branch off into my own, career. Now it's time to really take what I learned over there and use that. Started off in healthcare, spent about 3 years in assisted living. From assisted living, I saw the different dynamics working. My customers went from your generals down to your soldiers, your base level soldiers. Seeing those experiences just really changed how I looked at client-based services. Now I'm working with seniors with memory care. So now you have this even more of a human aspect that you're dealing with, nurses and everything else. And it's just, I'm starting to see facilities is no longer about making sure you're replacing assets. You're now dealing with comprehensive challenges of people. Your nurses, your administrators. Now I understand that everybody's calling, and it doesn't matter if there's a nut on the floor or a bolt on the floor. That's the most important thing. that has to be taken care of. And my entire career just starts to balloon. I get an opportunity from there to go into the industrial sector. So I worked warehouse and distribution, and my mind exploded seeing assets such as automation and conveyoring. I watched the construction of a 700,000 square foot facility where we condensed 3 different buildings into one. So it was a phenomenal experience through that. Got a chance to see early learning. So your infant through early school age children in one of the most challenging environments. So I spent about a year doing that in Philly. So in some of the hardest parts of Philadelphia, your Kensington, Allegheny, where everybody knows the challenges you have there. And I'm seeing, facilities is a true human element involved in it. Understanding, there's an impact when these assets go down. There's an impact to, important people, your soldiers out on a mission, for weeks at a time, come home to this trailer in the middle of 140-degree weather. What am I going to do? Well, we get there. My greatest takeaway from these experiences is walking in, seeing this just dejected, just what am I going to do? We need something to take place, and being able to change an outlook by just simply knowing what I know best, which is customer service, making sure that asset gets replaced, repaired, whatever it is. Yeah. Now moving into Brightly, I see how the different verticals that I've worked in really work. One of the biggest challenges in my career is every year, 3 months before the start of the fiscal year, we have our capital planning cycle. Mm-hmm. Well, 3 months before that, I started to develop this severe case of agita.
What is that? What is that?
The indigestion, the stomach. I'm not sleeping because I know 3 months of my life are going to be sucked into this capital planning. I got to go collect all the asset data, deliver this report that's absolutely going to get looked at and said, no, we're going to do this differently. Okay, I just spent 3 months of my life. I'll take whatever I can get at this point. So with the Origin platform, what I work with, and Greg, you and I had a little conversation before we got on here. I sat there for the first 2 weeks and my mind was blown how this product would have helped me, take 3 months of my life and I could literally develop a comprehensive plan for 2 weeks, have it ready to go. So I'm thinking to myself at this point, wow, I could have said, yeah, I'm working, sat up with my feet on my desk, which is never going to happen in facilities. And now I can just go deliver this comprehensive platform, and it's going to tell my story. And it's going to tell the work that the technicians are doing on a daily basis to do this.
Yeah, so when we were talking about it, I think one of the more intriguing things about it is how throughout facilities and asset management, we have essentially different languages being spoken, and it's based on where various people are positionally throughout the organization. And one of the concepts that's really important that I like to talk about is people figuring out a way to connect maintenance activities, maintenance outcomes, all the great things they do to the business in a way that's meaningful for leadership. And leadership certainly doesn't have time. It looks like they don't care, but they just don't have time to get in there and figure all these things out and kind of translate it from one language to another, because the way things are operating day to day are different for those different departments. So one of the things you mentioned was how you can take this data, this input, this information, and put it into a format that absolutely makes sense for leadership so that you can now give them the real meaning that includes what maintenance is actually doing, why they have this need, but now it's instantly or almost instantly converted into this logical format for them from where they sit within the organization. Is that a fair assessment of kind of what we were talking about?
Yeah, I think that's more than a fair assessment. I think what you have when you're looking at the Origin platform as a whole, my focus when I look at this through my lens is through my facilities experience, because it does me no good when I'm working with a client to approach this as a consultant. I'm not a suit. I spent 20 years of my life working, bleeding, spending countless hours, getting called in the middle of the night over and over and over and over, and I could keep going.
Yeah.
It was that was my job. That was my life. Well, what you're able to do with this platform is you're taking all that effort, the level of effort that's going into the CMMS. So all these pieces, what your techs are doing, what the vendors are coming out, and you're putting that information in, how you're maintaining the assets. Well, the big question I'm going to ask, Greg or any of our clients, what does your maintenance program look like? You really don't know. Well, that's the start of what Origin does. I can actually pull the KPIs and say, hey, we're only tracking 60% of the assets in your portfolio as far as the maintenance hour. Doesn't mean you're not doing it, but that's what we're recording. And I'm looking at the asset life cycle. We have a straight line data that we can go off of, but what we really want to see is what you're putting into that asset as far as your quarterly PMs, your weeklies, your monthlies, annuals, semis, everything like that. And it's going to actually take and create an adjusted life cycle so you see the degradation take place on that asset. From that, you don't have to focus on running around like a maniac for 3 months, capturing that data. It continuously updates. I'm
curious then, so as far as the actual process, so from a people perspective, we understand there's a lot of movement, there's people that are out doing maintenance, they're also keeping an eye out for, let's say, failure codes, causes, if you will, so they have a deep understanding as to why a machine may be failing, what's leading up to that failure, and so on. But then how does this data all get gathered and collected into Origin? Where is the input coming from? Is it from another Brightly product, or could it be any product out there that they're using to collect and gather information? Are sensors involved? Any of that?
So your smart assets, your sensors, when you're talking about reliability center maintenance, that's all attached to your CMMS. This product is actually able to connect with any CMMS on the market. That is the key to it all. It's not just a Brightly related product. It's a Brightly owned product, but not a Brightly exclusive product. So that's the beautiful part. Now, there's a ton of back-end work that goes into creating this connection, but when it comes down to it, once that connection is established, you see that flow of data coming over, and you're going to see the level of efforts that's going out. Now, here's a follow-up question. Based on the assets we have collected, how many times have you looked and said, I don't have enough people to do the work that needs to be done, the PMs that need to be done?
That's a really common thing across almost all of industry, because my personal view is we know we have this work that needs to be done, but it doesn't pencil out well on the balance sheet so that we can have the head count that we need to get this work done.
So Origin, based on the asset type and your units of measure, so your CMMS is focused on, I have one air handler, I have one generator. But what if we're talking about size of that air handler, the units of measure based on your BTUs, your CFMs, your generators based on your kilowatt hours, everything like that? That's the pieces that Origin's looking at. And there, we're able to build out a predictive amount of maintenance that's required for that asset. So when you add all your assets up on your building, you're going to see how many techs based on the maintenance is actually required to maintain that. So when somebody says, well, you have 2 people, but I'm giving you this report that says, based on the maintenance hours required and just the PMs, I need to have twice that many. I need to have another tech. I need to have another person. In my roundtable discussion, one of my clients actually was able to prove that to their leadership because of the data he was able to put into the system. Leadership said, you have this, I need this.
Now, when it comes to that data, so what I'm thinking about is if he was able to do that, which is incredibly successful. I mean, that's why you want a product like that, so that you can convey that kind of support for what you're trying to do. You can communicate to leadership in the way that they need it so that they can keep moving fast and keep this organization, this ship, if you will, on track. Do they get direct support from you or people on the team that help them figure out where they should look for and find which exact data points to pull in?
Well, that's the beauty of Origin. As our sales team sells the product, they also sell me or one of my team members with it. We have what's called the implementation side of things, which we're bringing you on. We're getting your system up and running. We're standing this up. But then we have a managed services team that's going to allow you to take and look at your my hair's on fire reactionary maintenance program, and we're going to be able to work with you to point out these KPIs. You know, what do we look like as far as how much repairs we're recording, how much investments. Like I just replaced, 2 compressors in a coil on this air handler. We're gonna help you figure out how to put that into the system, but we're also going to look to start to streamline your maintenance program based off of these key inputs. So if you're only tracking 30% of your maintenance, recommended maintenance, we're going to be able to pull that number and see that. And you're going to have to go back and look, why is that taking place? Is it because the techs aren't reporting, or is it because you just don't have the staff? And then you can take all the key data points and kind of you could build a business case out of it.
Did I catch something there that Origin is actually helping you monitor and rate user adoption of whatever system is driving the input data?
Yes.
Oh, wow. See, the reason I asked about that is another thing I think we all know is extremely common when we have various systems in place and people are supposed to use them, whether they're included in the process or not. When it comes to the selection and the implementation, there's always going to be it almost reminds me of like a PF curve. You get this nice rapid adoption, really strong, and then you get this kind of trailing effect and then this drop off. So I want to ask Corey now, because I saw him start smiling and say, yeah. So is that kind of what you're seeing out there, Corey, the way it unfolds with actual driving of user adoption, that it eventually falls off and you got to get back in there? And
if we historically, which we have, we've looked at the CMMS like a historian, right? It's a record keeper of the events, the things that we do and we accomplish, and it rarely goes beyond the CMMS layer. Origin sits on top of that and tries to take that information, like we talked about, it translate from the tactical level to the enterprise and the management function, right? Mm-hmm. There's an analytics screen in Origin that we call the CFO screen. On there, it shows their entire portfolio. What is your deferred maintenance? Which when we talk about that, we're talking about maintenance levels. Mm-hmm. So Origin is built for a facility tool, but it makes me think back to Tor Idhammer, who talks about it talks about there are valid jobs. You can never, what do you call it? I can't remember the quote directly offhand. I didn't prep for this. You can't just like pause a valid job, right? The organization has essentially committed to these service levels of their equipment, right? You define those service levels in Origin, and then Origin ranks you against that. Are you performing up to the level that you are required to? Mm-hmm. It can also tell you if you're over PMing things, right? Especially for facility asset or facility envelope components, which is what Origin's strong suit is. It has trillions of dollars in the portfolio, right?
Trillions.
That we're matching your asset type and category against, and it's using that information, that life cycle data, to share that information and help us become more efficient. So to this point, telling you where you need more people and also telling you where you're over PMing because you're going beyond, right? And as we know, there is an equilibrium of what you spend on your maintenance.
Indeed. And the thing I like, you have a tool that represents this incredibly powerful repository that we always want to have, but we almost never have.
Yep.
And then this thing about preventive maintenance. Preventive maintenance is great. It's what we want. We want preventive maintenance so that we're not...
It's a step in the right direction.
It is. But if you're over PMing,
yes,
you may not know it as an organization,
yes,
and you could have an incredible cost that's just bleeding off revenue that you could divert
materials,
elsewhere.
Carrying cost, tax liability, and overhead, right? Paying technicians to staff the service level that you don't actually need. Or can we put that towards another group of assets or another type of PM, right? Underperforming assets. Now we need to beef it up.
So now this one's for Pat. When should somebody be looking at Origin in their kind of maintenance journey? Like at what level? Is this for a more advanced stage organization that is getting closer to continual process optimization?
Actually, it's good for all stages. This is a product that will take a client, and we talk about the maturity continuum of our clients.
Mm-hmm.
A client who's at that very beginning stages, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what my maintenance program looks like. I don't know what it is. I have this great CMMS that allows me to track and everything I need, PMs, but what does that mean? What does it really look like? And you know, you and I, Greg and Corey, we've been talking about basically the inputs of Origin. We haven't even talked about the outputs yet.
Let's get into that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the outputs, the one I'm most intrigued by is this idea that we can take all the various activities and the inputs. I'm all about getting those inputs, but then the output makes sense to the various, I'm going to say players, you know, the organizational players at the different levels, if you will. And the one I'm always after trying to make things meaningful for tends to be maybe the CFO, because he's got the purse strings and that's his job, and we know and understand that. Absolutely, that's his job. He's protecting the organization, he's protecting the people, he's protecting the clients even, but they have blind spots too. And this is where these outputs become highly meaningful for eliminating the blind spot, but also allowing that CFO to move in the rapid pace that they're accustomed to. Is that a pretty fair statement? I
think that's a very fair statement. So when I'm working on the outputs part of this, so your capital planning, the one thing that I'm going to be able to do is help every one of my clients, and the goal is not for me to be the Origin admin. The goal is to turn our clients into super users, and that's what I want to teach them how to do, and allow them to tell me what's wrong with my product. That is the really goal. Like, this is a great product, but if it could do this, and allowing our clients to take a step back, deliver these comprehensive reports that become that bridge, that translator, because facilities, finance speak two different language. We're not even operating on the same planet. However, this product will spit out a comprehensive report on why you need to replace said assets in said order by said year, because the inputs are going to show that asset lifetime, and it's going to show either you're maintaining, it's decreasing at a rapid pace, whatever the case may be. But the CFO, your finance team, is going to look at this report and say, this makes sense. You know, we'd like you to change a few things, most likely, because we'll never get what we want.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to them. And this is exactly, I've had conversations with CFOs. When they look at this is really sharp. This is really great. Some of my clients are CFOs. So I'm working with facilities directors. I'm working with, high-level facilities professionals. I'm working with CFOs. My client base is all over the platform. Now, once that ultimately gets approved, the big question is, well, what do I do with this money? Well, Origin can actually flip this into a capital project funding resource. And it's not just going to give you basically, okay, this is how we're going to, it's going to actually give you breakout costs. So the big question is, how could it be possible it costs that much to replace an air handler? All right, well, I'm going to show you by showing the breakout costs, your electrical parts and labor, your mechanicals. Yeah, every part of the project is actually broken out on that project finance tool.
That would be pretty useful for a board meeting.
Exactly. I mean, how easy is it to go into a board meeting and let's say I own this facility and I own that facility right there, right? Overall, I can look at both of these facilities combined and we look at a report card, right? This is an output of Origin, is 0 to 100 or 100 plus if you're over maintaining it, right? What's the health of this asset? That's a pretty universal language, right? So let's say this one's a 60 and that one's a 80. but that one has a much higher risk associated than this one does, which is a factor of origin. Now I can use that information to weigh those and then say, okay, where do I need to prioritize the most amount of my resources towards that, mitigating that risk? Ultimately, I think that's what most leaders in an organization are. They're risk mitigators. They have to have the foresight to understand what's coming downwind, what's not going well now, and what fire do I fight off of a priority.
That's interesting, because I think leadership in general, at all levels, a leader's job is to, how do I give my people what they need in order to do this great work that they're trying to do every day, and
provide this service for our clients, our end users, the residents, whatever it may be.
Exactly. And they want to then take that and try to level up and use this information. But I want to get back to one little thing that you were both talking about, so I'm going to put this one back to Pat. When it comes to the risk mitigation and risk categorization, I know personally that happens in all aspects of facilities operations, manufacturing, etc. But one of the more common areas that always jumps out in my mind is in healthcare settings, where, certainly with JCO and other commissions, you have to manage things from a risk perspective. Is that what Origin is also looking at? Is those specific risk categorizations or designations, or is it backwards?
No, it's actually can be a driver of your capital plan. So one part of our implementation process is, what we're going to do is go asset by asset based on what you have in your portfolio and look, is that risk actually accurate? Do we have that? Is this air handler that's over your OR the same as this air handler that's over your lobby? No, absolutely not. We need to switch this. We need to change this aspect when we look at capital planning and asset tracking.
And then when people work specifically with your department and with you, I want to bring back something else you mentioned earlier. What you're really trying to do is enable people on the ground at the client site to become their own, in a sense, resident experts, so that they can, almost like a train the trainers approach, but far more consultative than that sounds, where you're really empowering them, you're teaching them how to be their absolute best so that they could actually create more experts within their own environment.
Correct. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is, well, this is how we've always done it.
Ooh.
This is how we've always done it. Well, what does that really tell somebody when your tech is telling you, well, I asked my tech, real story, and I want to do this. So I had a really seasoned tech one time, my best tech out of all the techs I had. He and I developed a great relationship, and we could sit across from one another and have honest conversations with one another. And I said to him one day, I said, Tim, I need to ask you, why didn't you get your PMs done last month? Well, I have to do this. And I said, no, I got you. But how come you're not getting your PMs done? Well, there's just too much work. I said, what can I do to help? Get more people. I said, Tim, here's the problem. I said, I just ran your PM hours for last month. It was 8. What's going on? Well, I don't have time to do the paperwork. I was like, well, this is where you got to start telling your story.
Yep.
If you sit down and you explain through your work orders, this is what I'm doing, this is all I'm capable of. I have over 40 hours a week that I'm putting into these PMs, and I'm only touching 50% of my assets. Now I can spit out a report, go to our leadership and say, see, I told you we don't have enough people.
I did that in the Navy with SCED, right? So we had the SCED, which was like the CMMS platform, and then we had another job platform. It was called OHMS. It was for everything that wasn't maintenance related, right? So I was in a work center as a E4. I was in charge of the work center, which is pretty uncommon. But I was in charge of that work center. We're supposed to have 5 specialists, right? We call them NECs in the Navy. So I had a specialist at NEC. I was one of supposed to be 5, and it was really only me, right? So how do I keep telling the story of I need more specialized technicians in here for the amount of work, right? The Navy allots you 40 hours a week to track and maintenance activity. how do I track the rest of the time? How do I track that I was unavailable for this because we were doing some shipboard mandatory training, right? I have to document all of my hours. So that's what I did. I used the CMMS to document all the work that I could accomplish, and then everything else I made sure I documented in the other job platform to then show the volume of work that my work center was being required to accomplish. So I had to tell my story, and I had to do it, again, translating into job hours or man hours that they could contextualize and look at and be like, oh crap, like how's Corey doing 45 hours of maintenance in a week? We're only allowed 40. Maybe we need to send them an extra body.
So in both instances, what both of you gentlemen have shared is one of the more common things where you get these barriers, the resistance comes from the idea that I'm too busy to stop for a moment and record something. And at first that's true, but if you create the habit and you buy in just a little bit, like for me,
what's in it for me?
Exactly.
You have to explain what's in it for me. Why should your guy document all his work? Whether he's doing the PMs or if he's doing something else, we can use the CMMS to document training, right? That can be a work type. We can do mandatory meetings. We could do XYZ. I did house cleaning, right? How many maintenance people, especially facilities world, do you know that take out the trash? Well, let me document that wasn't a 5-minute task. That was an hour-long endeavor.
That's right. And if you don't write it down, if you don't record it, meaning if you don't log it into the system, it never happened. No matter what you say, even though we know you're telling the truth, we don't have it. And then I have to go and ask you, well, it looks like you only did 8 hours worth of preventive maintenance work this week. And now somebody's saying, well, no, I did like 60 hours, man.
Yeah. Right.
And then you go check the timesheets and you go, well, he did get about 20 hours overtime last week, but I don't have anything to support that either, so now I'm going to get in trouble for that. And this is it, everybody, guys and gals out there.
Thank you, Dr. John Ross.
Yeah, no kidding. John Ross taught me that last year. He's
Yep.
like, if it ain't written down, it didn't happen. And overall, everyone, you've got these great technologies out here. You've got all these knowledgeable people from the maintenance teams, facilities managers, asset managers. You've got great people in leadership that want this information, but they can't go and find it. They do not have time for that. And your boss, your supervisor, the facilities manager, whoever it is, they're just not going to have time to go and sit down with each one of you and extract this out of your brain. You got to record it. And if there's a problem with how that system works or what's going on with it, bring it up to somebody, find out what you can do, go hit up your CMMS vendor. If you're doing that with Brightly, they're going to design a program for you to help you get shored up on that. They're going to help you figure out how to train your people more quickly so you get better user adoption. And I think, at the risk of overloading people with too much information, what I want to do is just thank both of you gentlemen for spending this time with me today. We're just getting started, kicking everything off here at Brightly Illuminate. It looks really amazing. They got a bunch of special stuff planned today. Now, this won't air today, but people want to hear about it. So we got lunch, we got keynotes, we got the CEO is going to do a talk today. We're going to have a really cool concert tonight with Marcy Playground and a lot more stuff. And these boys will probably both be joining a couple more times before the event ends. But Patrick, thank you very much for joining me today.
Greg, thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And Corey, thank you.
Always a pleasure to be on. Even if I'm just facilitating and sitting back a little bit, that's fine with me.
Hey, it's we're all here on this journey. It's a CMMS journey. That's what CMMS Radio is all about. And it's not always just the CMMS platform. It's what can you do with it. So if you want to get in touch with Pat, you can find him on LinkedIn. When I drop this episode, I'll put some information so you can hook up with him, ask him your own questions. He likes to help people out. And we're going to wrap this episode of CMMS Radio, episode number 1 from Brightly Illuminate.
Save 50% to attend the Reliable Plant and Machinery Lubrication Conference and Exhibit happening June 3rd through 6th, 2024 in Chicago. Use code GREG50OFF at conference.reliableplant.com or click the link below. Learning sessions, case studies, the latest technology. Reliable Plant covers every facet of asset management and reliability in one 4-day event. We'll see you in Chicago. Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.